Hello and welcome everybody. I'm here with Andreas Umland and Martina Högberg and Martin Svensson, and we will talk a little bit about the future of energy supply and also how do we secure the energy supply that we need. But first I'm going to welcome you, Andreas Umland. You are you're a researcher, you're an analyst with the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies, and you know a lot about Ukraine and Russia. And so we're going to phase this in with a little bit of a historical approach. And to those of you who don't know me, my name is Kajsa Paludan, and I will be the co-moderator tomorrow together with our main moderator, Aurore, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again. So, what did the energy corporations look like prior to the invasion of Crimea and also now in Ukraine? Could you please tell us a little bit about how we used to collaborate?
Until shortly before the war started in 2014, energy cooperation between the European Union and Russia had actually a pacifying role, because the Ukrainian gas transportation system was basically connecting the large Siberian gas reserves to the large market in the EU. And there was an interdependence between Russia and Ukraine that unfortunately then was diminished by the infamous Nord Stream project. And oddly, Germany was the main driving force in this Nord Stream project. And Germany had a philosophy behind it, which was very much based on the same idea of interdependence. So the German idea was to create interdependence between Germany and Russia, which then would create peace. What unfortunately Germany forgot was that the interdependence between Germany and Russia created through the Nord Stream pipeline diminished the interdependence between Ukraine and Russia. And 2 years basically after the Nord Stream 1 pipeline went operational, unfortunately the war started. And I think one of the reasons that Russia started the war was because it got less dependent on the Ukrainian gas transportation system.
Did they win anything? What do you think they won from this?
Well, Russia won, for the moment at least, this lesser dependence from Ukraine and could then be freer in its actions against Ukraine. But in the end, I think also Ukraine has been, in an odd way, through all this confrontation, winning from it because it got off this gas needle, I would call it, because they have an incredibly inefficient energy system. And one of the reasons was that they could get easily large amounts from Russia, which is now not any longer possible. And now the reforms are actually starting.
And talking about reforms, what consequences do you see for Ukraine today, and what do you think the future holds in terms of innovating for the energy supply for Ukraine?
I guess Ukraine is facing the same problems as other European countries. What is now actually just specific about Ukraine, that the Ukrainian energy system has become a military target for Russia, and that many of the innovative ideas that have been developed originally for totally different contexts are now helping Ukraine to basically fight this Russian war against the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. So people now have privately accumulators, batteries. They are thinking now about renewables, about solar panels, about wind turbines, not only to become more ecological and to become safer in their energy supply, but also to secure themselves against these Russian attacks.
And I guess also looking more towards Europe and European collaboration.
Yeah, there's then a sort of a natural match here, in that Ukraine has now additional motivation, not just because of ecological reasons and saving costs, but also for very hard security reasons to build up a new energy system.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all very, very interesting and very relevant. I'm going to pass on to Martina Högberg. You're the head of strategy and foresight at Svenska Kraftnät, the Swedish authority on securing the grid and our electricity supply. So we heard a little bit about the situation now here in Ukraine and how they're handling it, and what collaboration means for energy supply. Do you see any parallels to Andreas' case story here in the challenge that we are facing in Sweden and the EU?
Yeah, I would say, unfortunately, we see some parallels, of course. In Sweden, the dependency on natural gas has been very clear during this year, and that the shift that we are heading towards more electricity, more renewable electricity, more locally produced electricity from fossil-free electricity will just speed up, I would say, from this in the whole of Europe. And in Sweden, we need to do more larger volumes of electricity in order to also change from a climate perspective, but also from a security of supply perspective, to have it more locally produced. And we need also more flexibility. We need more of batteries, for instance.
And how much electricity do we need?
We are planning to, as a grid, it will be an essential part, but we are planning for a doubling of electricity in Sweden. Okay. And I would assume it's the same situation in the rest of Europe. But we have more, of course, renewable electricity and fossil-free electricity, not based on natural gas from the start, while other countries need to have more electricity, shift away from natural gas. But from our point of view, we need to stimulate, of course, the grid in order, and to be able to connect all of this.
Exactly.
While we have to connect more demand, which will also, it will double. So we need to double production, and we need to have it connected to the grid.
And how many years do we have to double our production?
Until 2045, more or less. So 20 years.
20 years to double.
So it's a big challenge, of course.
Yeah. And what markets or products do you see that we need to develop in order to actually reach that goal?
Yeah, in order to connect, we need to have more flexibility on the demand side, on the production side, storage, and we need a functioning market. We need a common market in Europe, interconnected market, so we can import and export and help each other.
Exactly. And to those who are listening here, could you explain more about the flexibility? What is flexibility in the grid? Yeah,
it could be, that we could have, for instance, we have ancillary services where in order to have frequency stable, you have to have batteries and so forth. And it could be bigger batteries for longer term storage, for instance. So you have many different things, and it will be, of course, different actors. We're just one actor as a transmission system operators, but we needed to have it locally and regionally and so forth in the households. And how do we use those households that have installed batteries? How can we use it to have more flexibility in the grid, for instance? So there are a lot of things that need to be developed to make this shift happen then.
In 20 years.
Yes.
Yes. Wow. The time is short. We only have 15 minutes here, so I'm just going to say, great, thank you, Martina. And I'm going to pass on the torch to you, Martin. As Sweden's largest financier of energy research and innovation, where do you see that we can make the biggest difference in terms of actually realizing some of the solutions that Martina pointed at?
Yes, thank you. I mean, it's a very big question, of course. And after listening to Andreas, and I realize our need for innovations are very small, really, in comparison. We're doing fine-tuning. And I could say, as working with government finance for many years, I say that we used to have a sort of problems of priorities, of course. We always prioritize sustainable energy supply. We have priorities about climate, of course. We should make sure we don't change the climate. We should have about national economic growth is important, affordability, the social issues. And what has become, I think the biggest difference is now that security is suddenly come up as one of the biggest enablers for all the rest concerning sustainable energy supply as an enable system. And we talked about security before. We talked about finding ways of counteracting the fluctuation in electricity demand and the supply. We talked about smart solutions for changing our behavior, how we use electricity, how we store electricity. We talked about new ways of connecting the electric cars with the system. And it's really of course, when you compare to what we see now in Ukraine, this is really small things, small variations. We looked at solar panels, big variation in renewable energy. And I think what we can see as the biggest difference is now we have to start thinking more about how we can become more resilient in total, not just security, but also resilience for disturbances. We have to realize we live in a society where disturbances happens on a more systemic way than before. And in this respect, like Martina mentioned also, we have to think about the interconnection. We have to increase the interconnection. How can we find the innovation that increase the interconnections and make us more resilient for the future? And that will enable the whole new sort of fossil-free energy system as well. And here is not, of course, not small solutions, but it's also, I would say, go back to more into the system innovation approach. I think we probably heard more about that here. The Sweden Innovation Days, this used to be a very popular term, and
Indeed.
here we really need system innovation. We need have the policy changes connected with the technology advances. We have to have all the actors involved. We have to have the transmission operators. We have to have the companies inventing. We have to the research and the science parks, and also us as financiers. So this is what I think one of the biggest new missions we have, where we have to find these system innovations. We've had managed with the vaccines for COVID, we have transport system, we have zero vision with the transport systems, we have smart cities, and now we have these European resilient energy systems where we have really great missions where we can work together and see how we can supply perhaps our small technological advances. Maybe there will be a step, but system innovations, I think, would be the really big thing here.
System innovation.
For resilience, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Martin. Head of Sustainable Business Development at the Swedish Energy Agency. So if we were to wrap up these very, very short minutes, but very interesting with all these great ideas to how we can move forward with securing the energy supply. Andreas, if you should send Martina and Martin off with some thoughts for them to think about for the rest of the day, what would that be?
Well, it would be mainly about Ukraine now, because that is the country I now care currently most. And here, what Ukraine needs is help both on the sort of, I would say, almost individual level, because, for instance, many individuals, not just companies, but private households have now batteries, and you can easily connect this battery accumulator to a solar panel or to a wind turbine. And also, Ukraine has a lot of potential with regard to energy. It has a large gas storage system, a large gas transportation system that can be used for also for other purposes, perhaps for hydrogen, for instance.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you very much.